Hello again. In this video, I am continuing to show you how to come up with an original science project topic by following the first steps of the scientific method. In the last video, I gave you some tips on how to make detailed observations. In this video, I'm going to lead you through turning those observations into testable questions. As with the last video, we will finish up with some examples. Now, observation was the first step of the scientific method. Often, when you see the steps written out in a textbook or on a classroom poster, the second step says something like asking questions or simply question. This step is a little bit more involved than just asking any old question, though. So I like to reframe the second step as a process of questioning, where you start by asking a basic question, which I'm calling a research question, then you do some background research, and finally you come up with a testable question. Let's talk about these two types of question a little bit. A research question is the broad question you ask after making a surprising observation. These sound like everyday kind of questions. Why does this happen? How does this work? These aren't usually something you can test with experiment, though, because it's not like you can ask the universe why and really expect an answer. You can ask Google or any search engine these questions, and that is why these questions are a great way to begin background research on an observation. Now, after your background research gives you some ideas, you can focus on one possible answer and ask a testable question. I tell my students the best format for a testable question is, how does A affect B? A should be something that you can change. B should be something that you can measure at the end of an experiment. In the technical language of science, these are the independent and dependent variables, but you should just think about them as something you can change and something you can measure. Now, it might sound like I'm making this step of the scientific method more complicated than it needs to be, saying that there's more than one type of question here. But this is actually something that many people, any curious person, would do without thinking. And that should become clear as we go through some of our examples, which we are going to do right now.
Here we have the two detailed observations we made in the last video. We are going to use these to form research questions using why. We are going to research these on Google, focus on a possible answer, then ask a testable question. Lastly, I will show you how you can easily go from a testable question to a hypothesis. The first observation was that insects visit the yellow flowers in my garden frequently, but they do not visit the pink flowers as much. So we noticed that some flowers attract more insects than others. The next step is just to ask why. Why do insects visit some flowers more than others? This is a perfect question to type into a search engine or database. Let's see what answers come up. So this is the first thing that shows up. It basically says that insects notice which colors, shapes, and smells seem to be associated with a good amount of nectar, which of course is the sweet stuff that bees and butterflies eat. Let's see what shows up as we scroll down. I'm noticing a few that also mention color or smell. This one says electrical charge, which is kind of weird. But clearly people seem to think flower color, shape, and smell are important. Now, if we were to use flowers and insects for our science project, we would need to do some more background research, but this is enough for right now. Now we just choose which one of these things to focus on. We could choose flower, smell, or shape, but we already noticed the difference in color, so why not do that? So how would we ask our testable question? Again, this should be in the form, how does A affect B? B is what we're measuring, and obviously we're interested in how many insects visit. A is what we're thinking might affect that. In other words, our testable question is, how does the color of a flower affect the number of insects that come to visit it? Let's say that we choose this as our project topic, so we would need to plan an experiment. You would find a way to change the color of a flower while keeping everything else the same, perhaps by using artificial flowers. And then your measurements would just be counting insects that visit in a period of time. Your hypothesis might be something like, if there are two flowers identical in every way except one is pink and the other yellow, then more insects will visit the yellow one. Maybe you think this because yellow flowers seem to be more common. Hypotheses often include one's reasoning. Now let's turn to the second observation. Hammers have long handles, but screwdrivers have shorter handles. Just noticing different tools with different handles. Again, the next step is to simply ask why. Why do some tools have long handles? I wonder what Google says. The first thing that shows up says that when you use a tool with a long handle, you don't need to reach as much. Wow. I'm not sure that really fits for hammers though, since it's not like you use it to reach something far from yourself. Let's keep looking. Here it says for large turnings, or whatever that means. I guess it helps when you need more force to get the job done. Here it says it provides more torque. Here it says that a long handle is like a long lever and it adds weight. I guess that makes the job easier. Let's look up that word from before, torque. It says here that torque basically means the force you use to turn something. So putting this together, larger levers are easier to turn. And maybe when the back of the hammer is being used to pull out a nail, it's easier when the handle is longer. Now that we have an idea, let's write our testable question. How does A affect B? Again, B is what we're measuring. In this case, how much force it takes to do something like pull out a nail. What do we think might affect that? The length of the handle. So our question would be, how does the length of a hammer's handle affect the force needed to pull up a nail? If we were to choose this as a topic, you'd have to be able to change the length of a hammer's handle and measure how much force pushes or pulls on the hammer, using something like a scale. Your hypothesis might be something like, if there are two hammers, one with a short handle and the other with a long handle, then the one with the longer handle will be able to pull up a nail using less force. In this video, I showed you how to do basic research on a detailed observation and how to write a testable scientific question. If you were able to turn any of your observations into a testable question, then you have successfully found an original science project topic by following the first two steps of the scientific method. Good luck in completing your science project, and stay tuned for more helpful videos.